This is the Yay. I'm Reg Clay.
And Norman G.
This is the Yay, where we talk about life in the theater and the theater of life.
Yay! Happy 2022.
Happy 2022, absolutely. And boy, I am dark. Well, I mean, I'm always been dark, but I got to move to the light. It doesn't matter. Happy 2022, and we have a wonderful guest. He was on episode 20. He helped us. He was one of the first individuals that we interviewed, and he's back again. Robert Estes, how are you?
I'm great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Robert Estes of Anton's Well. So we'll get to hear about, what's happening there, and we'll talk a little bit. So we won't get into an origin story because we already know your origin story. Folks can check out episode 20. But
we'll get a chance to kind of check in with what's happening now.
Yeah. We'll get into what's happening right now. I'll just ask Norman, as I begin each podcast, especially, how is 2022 treating you right now?
Well, excuse me, I'm unexpectedly working. That wasn't the plan. I was actually once again about to apply for unemployment and heard about a teaching artist gig and went, oh, that sounds like that could be fun. And so I just started that this week up at Redwood High School in Larkspur, and I'm working on The Crucible. I'll be working with a group of young actors on The Crucible, Arthur Miller.
Yeah.
So that's been the big thing this week. And then the other thing is just that we're ramping up for the James Baldwin piece. We're going to do a preview in February. And so I actually have to get the rest of the cast together. I've got Reg.
Yeah, we were talking about that. And it's so cool that you're teaching the kids. We were talking last night about Arthur Miller and The Crucible and how in the 50s you had these playwrights like Sidney Lumet and Rod Serling and a bunch of other screenwriters and playwrights who are using the classics, or they're using, other, like I think about the Scopes Monkey Trial. I think about Inherit the Wind.
Right.
Really making a critique on the 50s and McCarthyism and what's happening in America.
Right.
But not being explicit, not talking directly to it, but using, like The Crucible, like, what happened during the Salem witch trials.
Right.
So I hope the kids
it's been
get it.
Gorgeous. It'll be gorgeous for the actors because there's so many characters who seem to have a specific point of view, and then it just keeps shifting.
Yeah, exactly. Were you, Robert, are you a, because I know, I'm sure you love the classics. Did you ever get into like Sidney Lumet and Arthur Miller, that sort of type of playwriting? Plays?
I did in my life is in theater is defined to be, I didn't get into theater until I was 43. So I always think of things like before getting to theater and after. And interestingly, I was into Arthur Miller as an audience member.
Sure.
And then, but since I've been in theater, I've never done an Arthur Miller play, not for any specific dislike or anything like that, just, finding a direction. But there was an Arthur Miller play called Incident at Vichy.
Yeah.
And Eric Frasher Hayes, when he was at Role Players Ensemble, rest in peace, that organization, they did it. And it was like the Bay Area premiere of that play, and they did a spectacular job. So that's kind of one of my top 10 productions I've seen in the Bay Area in a great amount of time. So yeah, Arthur Miller, there's also one of his called The Memory of Two Mondays, and it's a one act. And I always thought that might be a possibility to do, just going a little bit deeper into his playbook. Sure.
Yeah, no, I've never even heard of that one. That one's cool.
Yeah, no, he had a very, very rich theater, just a rich collection of plays and interesting commentary. And, those were very interesting times. There are great parallels, unfortunately, between those times, the McCarthyism period and what's happening right now. There are a couple of current events. Well, really, COVID-19 has sort of taken over. I feel so bad for Jeffrey Lowe and a bunch of others. He was supposed to do, he had a play. I know that the Bahayan Boys, I think it was called, and that was canceled. And there are lots of other plays that have been canceled. I imagine, Robert, has Anton's Well, is there a season for 2022?
No, honestly, because we're such a small organization and my great producing pal, Rick Razzo, he's not been healthy. So it's just, every time I've thought of like trying to do something, I hate to say it, almost, this sounds weird, but luckily I didn't plan to do something, because every time it would have been crushed,
Right.
as it turns out. I thought of doing something in October, and maybe we could have got done with something October, but then Delta came up and it was terrible. And then I thought about doing something in February, and now we have this whole wave coming up. So we just, we're about the smallest theater company in the Bay Area. So it's really difficult to try to do something in these times right now.
Yeah, and you obviously you're not the only one. There are lots of companies that are struggling. Although it's curious, and we'll talk about it later, that there are some companies that are still forging on, either because they have a COVID protocol, or they have a relationship with I don't know, whoever owns the building, that they can do it. Sometimes you don't have that, so even if you have your protocol, building managers may say, no, forget about that. I'm not doing it. I don't care, what you have set up. But also, I mean, it's happening in, like I read in the newspapers, Walgreens and CVS stores, they're closing up a bunch of stores because they just don't have enough staffers. There are staffers who are like, hey, listen, I don't care what you want. I'm got to protect my own health. Well, there've been a large wave of people who are just quitting their jobs. They
Right.
don't want to come in, either because of COVID or because of other things. But Walgreens and CVS stores, many of their stores are closing due to COVID-19. So that's a big thing. And that's really hit in the Bay Area as well. I mean, not only have there been lots of mass organized thefts that's been going on, but with COVID, just going to a CVS store to, get something, like a lot of times where I go from my job, I work for the DA's office, and we have an office at 350 Rhode Island Street. And I'll try to stop at a CVS, and I'm like, oh, it's closed. Well, where can I go? So I don't know if you guys have ever had to experience that. Let's say a regular store has closed down and you can't go there anymore.
Occasionally.
Recently.
Not recently. I mean, that's where I live. There's Farmer Joe's. It used to be a Lucky's, and it was funny. It was Albertsons, Lucky's, Albertson, or the other way around. It was Lucky's, Albertsons, Lucky's, went away. Neighborhood was in danger of going very ghetto. Farmer Joe's comes in and brings in this high class. It's an independent business, but sort of at the level of Whole Foods. Really good stuff. Changed the nature of the neighborhood. It was really nice.
Yeah, you never know. I never really figured out how a store can shape a neighborhood or can destroy a neighborhood if the store goes away. So
Yeah,
that's sad.
It gets scary when everything is dark and the parking lot is empty and you're like, okay, what's happening?
Right, exactly. Also, we've been away for a while, but there have been a couple of interesting high profile cases that have resolved. Two women, Elaine Maxwell,
Yes.
which I'm very proud to, I'm very happy that, justice was done, at least, with her, because, she was sort of the honeypot that brought in a lot of these women
Right.
that Jeffrey Epstein victimized. And also Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos woman, who defrauded a bunch of folks of billions of dollars. So that happened.
I wanted to say it wasn't her fault. It really wasn't me. It was that bad man. That bad man made me do it.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's just hubris. Well, I mean,
did not work.
Yeah. Well, with Elizabeth Holmes, it was pure hubris. She had a great idea, and instead of working with the scientists to make it work, if it was going to work, Theranos, she just couldn't, she couldn't hear no for an answer, and led folks on a perilous path. And the very last thing that I have, so a Texas mom, this is one of these COVID-19 crazy stories. Well, excuse me, a woman in Texas put her child in a trunk to protect the child of COVID-19. This is a 13-year-old. And the DA's office found out about it, charged her, and then the judge threw it out, basically saying, no, there's no probable cause, it's okay. This COVID-19, there's been a culture war. There have been folks who are like, I'm not taking my shot. You and I, Norman, talked over the phone last night about Joe Rogan, about spreading misinformation. So not only do we have a biological thing going on with COVID-19 and the Delta variant and Omicron, but also an information war. Like I remember you and I were talking, Oh, a couple of folks got Omicron, but they didn't get really sick. That's what I heard. But then, you hear other stories. Like I have a friend of mine from Kyrgyzstan who's like, oh no, someone actually died and they got the booster shot as well as being vaccinated. So a lot of his misinformation, and poor Joe Biden, he's trying to get people to get vaccinated and he's fighting against the Supreme Court. You and I talked about that last night as well. So, um, Robert,
Yeah.
are you vaccinated and do you have the booster shot and all that stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I got the booster 6 months after I got my shot because, you hear that I would have got it anyway, but they went back and forth on the booster for a while because there was a moral issue for a while. Well, we shouldn't have a booster because other people don't have anything, especially around the world.
Oh, sure.
But then it became apparent with Omicron that the booster was really necessary. So I was lucky enough to get my booster, and I was lucky. I'm my little proud moment of 2020 was, or 2021, excuse me, keeping up with the years, was that I actually took my mom, who's 89, to all three of her appointments, and she lives in Sacramento. So I was very proud. I got appointments for all three of her, and I took her all three times.
That's very cool.
But I mean, I just feel like in different parts of our society that, I mean, I'm sure among us, meaning thoughtful theater people, the vaccination rate's probably really high. I mean, there's gonna be an odd duck somewhere who doesn't do it. But then, you hear the overall vaccination rate in the country say 70%. And I'm like, well, the people I know, I'm sure it's 95%. In Berkeley, it's like 95% for the city of Berkeley. So you're
I
like,
think there may be some folks hiding out, but they're hiding.
yeah,
They're
there's some
not.
oddballs.
Most of them are not putting it out there.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some oddballs and some people don't do it, but I'm just saying, like, if 95% of the people say that I know or that or live in Berkeley are doing it, that means somewhere else in the country, like 45% are only doing it, right? Because the
Right.
overall average is 70%.
Right.
So I'm like, if you're in the part of the country where the vaccination rate's 45% and Omicron's raging, everyone's going to be sick. I mean, it's just, it's still really good to be vaccinated, but Omicron hits the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, right?
Right.
I mean, it's much better to be vaccinated. Don't be an idiot and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But I'm just thinking, like, parts of the country that are at 50% vaccination, it's just insane how much COVID they're going to get.
Right. Well, right. And you can predict it. You can kind
Yeah,
of,
I mean, it's all
this region
predictable.
is going to get hit. I mean, that's what we're still waiting for, this crest, right? We're still,
Yeah.
the numbers are still climbing.
Yeah, and even people, you hear a number, it's like, where do I get my information from? Who's telling the truth, who isn't? Do we trust the CDC? Of course, I do trust the CDC, and I trust Robert Fauci. And of course, poor Fauci, he goes into these, Senate hearings, and it's not even conversation anymore. It's like sort of shouting.
Right. They just
Rand
yell
Paul,
at it,
has a problem with him, and I think he called another senator an idiot or something like
moron.
that.
Call him a
That's right,
moron.
he's moron because of the
What a
misinformation.
moron, he says under his breath, but into the mic.
Right, exactly. So it's pretty sad. Okay, so those are the current events. We can talk about well, how is the state? I mean, when I think of you, Robert, I always think of you with a smile on your face, but I imagine this has to be a bit soul crushing. I mean, as an actor, you're like, okay, well, I can't get a job, or as a writer, I'm like, well, I guess it's all going to be Zoom from now on. But I imagine as a owner of a theater company, you have these ideas and you want to keep the momentum going, and it's hard because of of what's happening now. How are you taking, I guess, this permanent pause button that you have to hit on Anton's well?
It's funny because Norman and I talked a little bit last night, and we were talking about the phrase futurism. What's the future of Bay Area theater?
Yeah.
And I thought, I hung up and I thought, man, I'm going on this show called The Yay, but I'm pretty much feeling the nay, And,
we have to keep hope alive. Yeah.
No, you really do. No, actually, for me, it's been odd because it's hard to say things that I don't mean this anyway. I think it's wonderful people are doing Zoom, and I think it's wonderful people are doing play readings on Zoom and doing everything. I'm just not a Zoom person. I know I'm on Zoom this moment, which is always funny. I always think it's funny when people put down Facebook on Facebook. Well, I'm on Zoom, but I'm not really a Zoom person. So for me, I just found a really different focus. I've been just reading a lot, and I've been reading a lot of poetry, and I haven't really been reading that many plays, to be honest. I've been really into poetry. I've been really into short fiction, but I think like for me, the poetry and the short fiction is going to influence Anton's well, because I think it's things we can do once this thing is over. Uh, I think
Mhm.
I think our company's always been like poetically attracted to poetic theater language, and I've been discovering poetry. One of the productions I love, Scott Baker and his company did a show, and I mangled the title. It was something like "You Must Love Poetry," but it was different actors, and he focused in on the beat poetry, and it was a
Oh,
really
nice.
effective.
Allen
It was a
Ginsberg
really
and
effective production,
yeah. Am I
and
saying that right?
so
Yeah, go ahead.
um, so for me anyway, Anton's well, we really haven't done anything because we haven't done any Zoom, and we haven't done. I mean, like I say, half of us has been sick, and I've been dealing with a lot of family things, but I do feel that aesthetically, I've been really deeply exploring poetry and language, and I think our company will come back and pursue that in dramatic terms, in theatrical terms. The thing about the company is, and I think kind of people forgotten about this because of COVID, but before COVID, the whole AB5 thing was huge. And how do you deal with AB5? And
Right.
because COVID has been so devastating, people kind of put that out of mind. And for me, it seems like there's two things about AB5. Number one, you can say to people, we are going to hire volunteer actors, volunteer designers, and we'll give you a stipend. That's option A. Or option B is we're going to comply with AB5 and we're going to pay you the minimum wage and with benefits and everything. And so the odd part for me is that for Anton's Well, I've always been attracted to option B. I mean, the whole purpose I started Anton's Well was not to have volunteer actors,
Right.
Does that
because
mean you also have to file 1099 forms and do all the tax stuff as well,
well, you
Robert?
had to file. Yeah, you had to file. Yeah, there's paperwork. The thing for me is, I used to run a small business, so I actually know how to do all that, and
Mhm.
I know the software program, and so in a certain way, I know I can handle it up to a certain level. But but paying minimum wage, which in Berkeley is now I think like $16.52 an hour or something. It's not 15 anymore. I don't even think. It just is like, okay, we may only be able to do one production a year, maybe two, rather than if we were really productive for a while, we were doing three or
Right.
four productions a year, multiple plays. So, just that push pull between, I don't really want to be a volunteer organization because that's not why we started it. But if we go to the minimum wage model, then, we're not nearly, there's just bigger theaters that have bigger foundation grants and can do things. So, it's just I want to go with my heart and do the minimum wage, but it's daunting because I also want to do lots of productions.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a distinction between the companies that really can afford to pay the minimum wage or even higher than minimum wage. Um, Make a distinction between those and the companies that are really just starting, like let's say Anton's Well and let's say Plethos, and there are other little
Yeah,
companies that they mean well and they're doing great stuff. Just the quality of the work. But you're not at the position as of yet. And I think all companies are at a position where they don't have the money for that. They don't have the grants. They don't have, the angels to support them.
yeah,
And AB5 should not destroy those companies. And this is something that Norm and we've talked about, a great deal. And as an actor, I know the difference between a company that's just starting out, and let's say I work with them, not just so because of the money, like this James Baldwin thing. I don't really care about the little bit of money that I'm going to get because it's not about the money. It's about working on a project and something that's going to grow. There's a distinction between that and a company that victimizes its workers, and it's because they do have the money, they just don't want to pay because they really don't care.
yeah. Or they just don't. It's just, I think some companies have the money, but we just got used to not paying. So you're like, why should I pay? I don't
Right.
know. I think they care, but it's just like, oh, we care, but we need to have a new building, or we care, but we
Right.
want to, we want to have a great advertising campaign or something. I don't know. It's
Right.
just, yeah. But but interesting lately though, there's been kind of like, a conjunction between, I was talking about the poetry and that, and then this problem of like, how do you put on plays? And I've realized lately, like, that we may do plays that have not too many actors, but are heavily into poetry, and it may be a way to do something with small cast, great language, and pay people, and also, but stay aesthetically what we want to do at our company, which is explore language. So
Yeah.
we are making
Norman,
progress.
yeah. Norman, I had a question for you. How is Playground doing it? I mean, Playground seems to be forging ahead. It sounds like I'm sure Jim Kleinman has a something. He has a protocol as far as making sure that people are vaccinated and that sort of stuff. So
Oh, yeah.
how are they doing it?
Well, and also, the venues are going to have their requirements. So we're Freight and Salvage, because Berkeley Rep, when they postponed their first show of the season, because of dealing with the protocols, they also decided it didn't make sense to have renters in, because their staff usually supported anybody coming into the space. If you're not comfortable having your own shows go up, why would you bring outsiders in? So Berkeley Rep said no. Freight and Salvage, on the other hand, was like, well, Jim assured them that we would be sticking to protocols, and that there were that's where the union has been good in their response to this, because the union requires that you make sure people are vaccinated. The union requires that you test everybody. The union requires that you keep a separation between the folks involved in the production and the audience. And so, with all those things in place, the venue felt comfortable having us there. So far, it's been running pretty well. And you run into different people's level of comfort. Some people want to run up and give you a big hug. Some people throw that elbow out. It's like, no, right there. Here's my fist. That's as close as we're getting. And, so far it seems to be working. On the economic side, Jim was already navigating all this stuff once AB5 started. And you mentioned him, and I realized, I should talk to him about what I can and can't do with this reading, because I want to make sure I'm not getting in trouble or getting anybody else in any trouble. But,
so the James Baldwin readings, that's going to be at Potrero?
Yeah.
Ah, awesome.
No, not Potrero. We are starting to have a conversation. We will see what's going to happen with that. No,
I understand.
Peralta House.
Peralta House. Yeah. And yeah, you told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice if it can be at the Potrero Hill as well.
But no, I can talk to Jim, because he will be on top of what AB5 requires.
Yeah.
And where you can work around it, because you asked about like 1099s, for example. If you don't make $600 in a year, then I don't have to write a 1099.
Right, exactly. And there are a lot of companies. I mean, I've had, as a stage manager, I've had, I don't want to mention the company, but they would say, well, listen, we're going to cut you a check for $5.99.
Right.
And then we'll give you a little bit extra so that we can. And I'm like, hey, that's great. You guys are jumping hoops to, get me paid more. But you shouldn't have to do that.
As long as the paperwork is clear. Yeah.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I do wonder about like big companies like the Orpheum Theater. They still have a season. I walked past the Orpheum Theater, and it doesn't appear that anything is being shut down. I'm looking at, they're doing Hades Town. I think it's going to be on March. And I'm like, okay, so how are they doing it? And how are they? I never quite understand, how stuff like that is done.
Well, I think what Omicron is showing us is.
Oh, go ahead, Robert.
No, go ahead, Norman. I'll finish after Norman.
I was just going to say, with Omicron, it's become a whole new ball game, because that's why these shows are closing. Is you get in the middle of a process, and then you start having too many. Oh, we have to pause, or this person can't come, for 48 hours, and then they've got to get tested, and then that's it's a mess in terms of trying to keep a production schedule. So I don't know how people are going to navigate it.
I find the whole thing, early on we had different rules. We went to lockdown, in April of 2020, and then after that we had the whole color coded system, like if this meets, and then we had the thing where restaurants were like 50%, 25% of capacity, 50% of capacity.
Right.
And now it's completely like libertarian wild west. I mean,
right.
Anybody can do anything. I mean, theaters are closing down, but then the Warriors are playing before 20,000 fans, no social distancing. And like, I love certain things, but like Norm and I, of course, love the Alley, right? And I love other piano bars, but some of these piano bars, they're like small rooms, but they're showing up and they're singing. I mean, and so it's just,
Well, I realized I went last night,
yeah,
and but I went to the early set, and there were only a handful of us scattered around the piano.
Were
Yeah.
anyone
And I
checking
left.
for, did anyone check to see if did you have to mask up, or did they check to see if you were vaccinated?
Well, they are being very loose about it. A lot of people are masked. Obviously, if you have a drink in front of you, you're probably not masked. But that protocol from the early reopening still is kind of in place. If you're at your table, nobody cares if you're masked. When you get up to move around the room, please mask up.
Yeah.
And then the musicians get to decide. So the guitar player wants everybody masked. So if you're at the piano and you want to sing, you have to be masked.
Yeah,
And so that's been fine, but there's no, like Robert said, it's not like the system has said, this is what we're doing.
yeah.
Everybody's sort of deciding for themselves.
Yeah.
It's like a massive psychological test all over the country to see, just how
Yeah.
we are. Like Norman and you and I always talk about community and, being good neighbors. Sometimes we talk about it in the theater perspective, like community theater being something for the community, but also just, Oakland in general, like us being good neighbors and that sort of stuff. And now Omicron and just this whole pandemic thing, it's really testing all of us nationwide,
Yeah.
how we good are to each other. Will I put on a mask on behalf of somebody else, or will I assert my freedom? And you're right, Robert, it's the wild, wild west. I mean, it's, and I get the feeling that companies are sort of rolling the dice. They're like, well, let's see if we can get away with it, because financially we still want to bring in the money, and let's just hope nobody dies, or, we don't get sued or anything like that.
Right. I mean, San Francisco Playhouse has been running full productions, and they finally had to cancel last weekend of 12th night, and they canceled one other part of it. But they put on 12th night with a big cast with music,
Right.
and they had audience. I saw a picture of an audience that looked like they were kind of socially distanced because they didn't have that many people, so they were all like seats in between them. But they were able to put on it was a highly praised production. You can watch it on streaming, and they made it almost through. And then one of my favorite groups, the Maskers in Point Richmond, they've been out of business for 6 years because their building has structural problems, but they're scheduled to open on January 21st. And so far they're still sticking with it. And then other companies like Actors Ensemble Berkeley, which I also love, they just canceled their production, which was going to open, in a few weeks. And so, part of me wants to go to the Maskers because I have a lot of sentimental attachment to them. They gave me my first directing job, but I'm not thrilled about being inside in a small theater. So
Yeah. And
tough.
I imagine, I would be upset if I were an owner of a theater company and I make a moral decision to shut down because I want to protect the audience and whatever. And then I see another theater company, they're just rolling, and, they're having, an audience and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well,
I felt that back in March of 2020 because it was a Tuesday, and I said, okay, I have to figure this out. And I looked down, I did research, not do your research. I'm not saying I was a scientist. I hate that, but I gained information. And back then it became obvious. I mean, when you read, it was like, you know what, if you stay open, you're not just like, it's not just, okay, we stayed open an extra day. No, you've just increased the chances 5 times of this thing spreading, because back then it was very much like we learn as we go. But back then, a small difference could create a huge difference in infection. In fact, that was shown because back then San Francisco closed down early and Los Angeles County stayed open, and Los Angeles County suffered terribly because they stayed open while San Francisco closed down. A huge difference in infection rate. So yeah, back in March of that Tuesday, maybe the 13th or whatever it was, I decided to close down our shows. And another theater company that's super progressive and super awesome and super telling everyone else what they should do, and I'm not going to name them, they stayed open, and yeah, it pissed me off.
Yeah, no, and that's a very, very healthy, normal reaction to have, especially when you have a built audience. I mean, when you first came on the Yay, episode 20, I forget what production you were doing. I was trying to listen to the podcast, but since then you've done the ear. What is it? The human ear.
Human ear.
Human ear.
Is it 992 Psychosis?
448 Psychosis.
I'm sorry, 448 Psychosis. You've done so much stuff, and even when you're not, I mean, I don't know if your ears have been burning, but we've been talking about Anton's Well and just the wonderful productions, and we've had immediately after I saw The Human Ear, I had to have Crystal Brown on because she had, she did such an amazing performance. We've been trying to get Luel Seniors in, but he's a bit shy.
He's very shy.
Yeah.
Luel is fantastic. Luel is like
wonderful.
He is so talented and so smart. But
I just saw him do a reading, and one of the scripts they threw at him, he played a 70-year-old woman.
He can play anything.
He said, wait a minute. So I just want to be clear. You want me to read this part, right? And he was like, yes. And he was wonderful.
And it's small world. I met Luel, because he was a stage manager for a long time for Central Works.
Yeah.
And in 2012, I sort of took over, at least for one show, and Luel was showing me the board. This is before I even knew who he was and the acting and all. And he was transitioning from getting behind stage to getting on stage.
Yeah.
But I mean, and to getting back to Anton's Well, you've had a really great body of work that really shows what Anton's Well is all about. A small cast, but really, really powerful, dramatic pieces of work. There was one, I forget one show, Norman, you were telling me about it, where there was just a lot of physicality. And there was
Tender Napalm.
I bet it was Tender Napalm, yeah.
Tender Napalm or 448 Psychosis. Those are very
448
physical.
Psychosis is probably the one I was thinking of, yeah.
Was that the one with Kim Donovan? Was she in that one?
That was Dirty Butterfly.
Yeah, Dirty Butterfly.
That
was intense.
Very intense.
Not intense physicality, just intense.
Yeah,
just intense emotional. Like the audience kind of walked out on it at times.
Oh, well, they should be able to take a little bit of that.
But that was a brutal show. I saw that show. That was a brutal fucking show.
Yeah.
But then the next thing was that wonderful set of short pieces that you did. They were sublime. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Carol Churchill.
Yeah,
that was that was fun.
Yeah, Susan Evans loves Carol Churchill, and I've been in, I think, 2 productions of Carol Churchill. But I think I don't know if you were able to do the Beckett plays. That was last year.
We got 2 performances in, and then that's when we canceled.
Oh, what a shame. Are you thinking of redoing it?
No. If I did, I'd drop one of the plays, to be honest. But 2 of the plays turned out great, and one of the plays was just too much. We kind of got too ambitious for what our company could do. But the actors worked really hard. But 2 of the plays may have been Bay Area premieres. It's kind of odd. Beckett's this big name, but a lot of his plays aren't done because for whatever reason. So it was really interesting to be in a church doing Beckett. It was this pristine church doing Beckett. We've had a good run of finding odd but appropriate places for our plays. But we, the thing was, at least we got 2 performances in, so the actors got to, learn the roles. We got to explore. We got to do it. It's unfortunate we couldn't complete it, but it was not it wasn't a hard decision, actually. It's the difference between a hard decision and painful. I mean, it was not hard, it was painful, but it wasn't hard because it was obvious at that point that, I mean, I know we canceled on Tuesday, and then during that week, people were like, oh no, by Friday, everyone had canceled but a handful, because the realization was that you could contribute to an explosive spread of COVID. And back then, again, when COVID first came out, it's been deadly enough as it is. But back then, we didn't even know how deadly it'd be. We didn't know. I mean, I hate that. The thing that bugs me about the right wing, among other things, is after something happened, then they like, oh, well, we knew that. And you're like, no, we didn't know that,
Right.
Like, oh, Biden, when he said the epidemic was just of the unvaccinated, well, when he said that in July, that was true.
Right.
And it still basically is true. It's just that Omicron does, go to the vaccinated somewhat. But I hate this thing of like people afterwards saying, oh, well, they said 3 million people would die. Yeah, well, 800,000 have died. That's pretty lot.
Yeah.
And if we hadn't done anything, pretty obviously 3 million people would have died.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. If it weren't for the individuals who, actually obeyed, and like I said, it is a civics test, and it is a A psychological test, because
Yeah, well,
we're
we're
very
as
privileged.
a
We have our toys, and when we're told to take our toys away, and to do things like like I'm an essential employee, and we got an email saying, hey, listen, all of us need to get that booster shot, and you have a deadline. Of course,
Right.
they don't tell us what the or else is, but we're compliant. I was like, hey, I'm going to do it anyway. I never understand people who would lie about that sort of stuff, especially when it's free.
To go to
And
the effort of lying or the expense of faking a card when you could just get the vaccine for free.
yeah,
right, exactly. Compliance versus non-compliance, and America's all about, well, it's about freedom and me doing what I want to do. But you know, uh, would you kill someone? I mean, you talk about you
yeah, but
taking your mother
yeah,
to and my mom is suffering from cancer, and thank God I have my sister in Maryland who's taking care of her. I
Right.
would feel bad if I, in the name of freedom, did not get the vaccine, visited her, and then she dies as a result.
right,
So
Right.
right.
people have to think about things like that.
Well, I remember back there was somebody when this whole thing was first starting, and then all of a sudden we realized that it had gotten on the loose. A person in the CDC said, "Oh, great! Now we're going to have 60 to 70 million infections and 2 to 3 million dead."
Right.
And she got fired because she's like, "Oh,
Right.
that's alarmist. That's this. That's that." But when I heard that, I thought, okay, these people. The thing about COVID is like this is not a surprise. This is
Right.
not. I mean, and give him. We don't like Bush, fine, and he did terrible things, but actually he was totally fine on. He started a committee or a panel to say what happens if something like COVID happens, and
Right.
of course Obama, being a smart person, didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to reject that because Bush did it." Obama
Yeah.
said, "Okay, that's great. Let's keep it going."
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
and
weird
then
thing to
Trump
me is like
defunded it.
the weird thing to me is like the whole thing about this uh, COVID is that we actually had bipartisanship about this in the good sense of the word
Yeah.
until Trump came along.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like if Bush had been president or Obama had been president, this would be a whole different reality because
Yeah.
they both understood and they would have done the right thing from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And
right.
so it's only because we had this, Trump in and he poisoned the well so badly that, half the country won't do things.
Right.
It just is amazing to me. Like this is the one time that Bush and Obama were totally together. They had a good plan. It was all bipartisan, and it all got screwed up.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And who knows what have happened if Hillary had won, or if the electoral votes had went the way that it should have gone. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. This would have happened because we did have H1N1 and the Zika virus. So Bush saw that.
Right.
I think that Bush was disruptive only to an extent, as far as being partisan, but he recognized,
right.
hey, I've got to act on this. And you're absolutely right. And that was the
Yeah,
thing that Trump defunded. There was a whole panel, I forget what the panel was called, but there was a whole committee.
For the
Maybe it was
pandemic
part of the
response,
CDC.
it was a
pandemic,
there's a whole
pandemic
unit set up.
response something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly
Yeah.
for this.
exactly.
So, but then the CDC person, she cracked me up because she said, "Well, there'll be 60 to 70 million infections and 2 to 3 million dead." Well, we're now at like 65 million infections, so they're totally right. Now we're
Right.
not at 2 or 3 million dead because we've done these, we're at 800,000, which is terrible. But of course, the 2 or 3 million would have happened if we didn't do anything.
Right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
That always gets me is like, well, there's not as many dead as they said there'd be. Yeah, because we've done all these things. I mean,
Right. Because
you
we
know,
responded.
the fire's not as bad as we thought it'd be because we put water on the fire.
Right. It's funny.
And the
We
whole
had
thing about freedom is like, yeah, you don't have the freedom to drive on through a stop sign.
Right.
Like these
yeah.
aren't like the thing that gets me is like these aren't that difficult to understand.
Right.
Well, yeah, for some of us, yeah. I remember we had Corinne Ritchie on, and she said, "Well, a president can't do that much damage in 4 years if for one term, and unfortunately, we can. I mean, we now see just how much how we." Freedom isn't free. I mean, I think
Right.
that's a
So,
famous quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It takes civic responsibility to understand who we're voting for and what the damages can be
Yeah.
if we don't pay attention. And
the,
so we're getting the lesson right now.
yeah.
I had a
The thing
quick
to
question
me
for
is,
you. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean. The thing to me is the thing I always get is like, if you told me like we want you, Robert, to build a house, I'd be like, I don't think I can build a house, you know?
Mhm.
I don't know the architecture. I don't know plumbing. I don't know electricity. If you said to me, Robert, we want you to destroy a house, I could get a sledgehammer out and I could do a pretty good job on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so the thing to me is like, I always feel like the people who want to destroy government, which there are in our country,
Yeah.
it's an advantage. It's easier to tear something down than it is to build something up.
Yeah.
So Trump wants to tear something down. Of course, in 4 years, you can tear a lot of stuff down in 4 years.
Right.
It's a lot harder to build something up in 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is what Biden is trying to do.
Especially when, in 1 year, they're already telling you, you didn't get it done. It's like, it's been a year. Come on.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's gotten done.
It's a lot. I mean, we would have had the COVID relief bill that was great, that gave us things, and we wouldn't have gotten good judges. Biden has gotten a lot of great, totally diverse judges approved, which would never happen. If we wouldn't have won those 2 Senate seats in Georgia, that would have never happened. So
yeah,
good things have happened. But of course, because we have 2 senators who are half Democrats or whatever you want to call them, anyway, that's not theater.
Yeah. No, that's okay. But I can sort of tie it in, because it's not just an attack. When I hear about Republicans or, those in the far right, Trump is really just the cherry on this cake, this maudlin cake of extremism, attacking liberalism as if liberalism, and it actually ties into, I'm thinking about Eli Sonny Urquiza, who wrote the Living Document, and he wants more diversity, really pushing theater companies to have a more diverse cast, diverse storytelling, that sort of stuff. And there are those who are like, well, aren't you pushing this liberalism on the theater community? You can't create theater by sort of legislating this sort of stuff. I wanted to get your take on it, Robert. And when you think about Anton's Well and the plays that you do you think about diversity? Do you think that first, or do you think the play first? Does that come into your realm of thinking? I don't know if the Living Document changed how Anton Dwell does theater now.
So when Anton Dwell started in 2015, I thought I would just do plays that I love, to be honest, and I just wanted to do it because I wanted to pay actors a little bit more, and because I wanted to give myself an opportunity. I mean, I got into theater late. I wasn't theater trained, so I need to create my own thing, I thought. And I really thought I'd do plays like David Mamet's American Buffalo. David Mamet now is, out of fashion, to say the least. But, or I thought I'd do like House of Blue Leaves, which is a play I love, just to give you an idea.
Right.
But at that time, there was a big movement for women to have 50% of the plays done by 2020.
Sure.
And so I thought, oh, well, I'll read some plays by women. And I started reading plays by women, and I found out there's kind of, and I kind of love the Harold Pinter, Samuel Beckett tradition in theater.
Right.
I kind of relate to that. I kind of like plays that have, really challenging theatrical language. But I found plays by women who I really loved, and were in a sort of tradition that I kind of wanted to explore. So that's how we did like 448 Psychosis. That's how we did The Human Ear. That's how we did What Rhymes with America. And I also got into a kick of like, I really thought, you know what, I like doing plays that haven't been done here before. I feel like we're adding a little value to the Bay Area. And so then as I went forward, people said to me, like, our first 2 plays were cast with all white actors. And just because they're my friends, and because they would work with me, and because, when I put out audition notice, I don't get a lot of people back then, you don't get too many people show up. And so, there's certain people, and them, but our first 2 or 3 shows were all white. And so even the white actor said, hey, you should try for diversity, or you should, reach out and try to reach more people and do things. And so I did that. And it's kind of simple. You just start talking, like you talk about Crystal Brown. It's like, I saw her and I go, she's fantastic. And so she did one of our plays. And then I saw Llewell, and he's fantastic. And they, they have to be in the same play. And then Maya was in a play, and we had Jesse, and we had Micah in Dirty Butterfly. And so the diversity came sort of like just as, hey, this is another way to make our company relevant, and to just enjoy being in the Bay Area, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you didn't have to be pushed into doing it. It sounds like you guys were on your way of doing it anyway.
Well, just it just is great. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, they're just, if you know that, if you just kind of expand your look a little bit or just think about it, then you're like, this is great. And we did one play. Dirty Butterfly was by the leading kind of unknown. This is kind of contradictory terms, but she's Debbie Tucker Green's this fantastic playwright, Black woman in England. And a lot of her plays, to be honest, would have to be directed probably by Norman, a Black person, you, Reg, or somebody, because they're very much like about a Black family or something. I wouldn't feel like, I don't know, just like, I'd feel like this would be cool. Maybe Norman would direct it, maybe Reg would direct it, maybe someone else would direct, Crystal would direct it, whoever. Dirty Butterfly, it was kind of an interesting story because it flipped the usual dynamic. Usually in a story, the Black person or Black people are being hurt and the white person is trying to help the Black person or not trying to help the Black person. But in this play, it was the white person was getting hurt, was getting beaten, was abused, and the two Black people were responding to the white person who was in distress. And so I felt fine directing it, and the actors felt fine, and we all talked about it. But the Black actors kind of liked it in the way because it reversed the usual dynamic of what we see on stage. And like Norman said, it was a brutal play. I picked the play though, but the reason I picked the play was, to me, the play was like a metaphor for my own. When you walk down the street in the Tenderloin, you see someone shooting up heroin, right?
Right.
And you think, I only saw this for the first time, say about the time I did that play a couple of years ago. And my first reaction was, hey man, don't do that. That's not good. That's uncool. You're hurting yourself. But of course, I didn't say that to the person because they're shooting up heroin. I mean,
right.
But the other part of me, and this is the part I don't like to acknowledge, and one problem I find in theater a lot now is I feel like it's hard for people to acknowledge that there's a dark side to our personality, to be honest. We all have to be so kind of perfect.
Yeah,
the thing I don't like about theater is I don't think you have to be a perfect person to do theater. And sometimes I feel like you do have to be a perfect person to do theater. That's another issue. But anyway, just to finish this. So my first reaction was, hey, don't do that, man. That's not good for you. We should, let's get a social worker. Let's do something. Let's help this person. But my other reaction was like, man, you're messing up my life. I don't want to see that. Honestly, and so Dirty Butterfly, it was interesting because the two Black characters, one of the Black characters was completely obsessed by the white woman, and he was like listening to her they were set in an apartment building. He's listening to her, and he can't help himself. He's obsessed by this white woman. But the other Black character is a Black woman, and she's had enough of it. She tried to help the white woman, it didn't work, and she's just like, you're driving me crazy. You're fighting so much, I can't even sleep in my bedroom. Just get the hell out of my life, basically. Yeah. But I just thought the play was an interesting kind of tough metaphor about how our life is right now, because we walk down the street and we see things where it's like part of us wants to help or part of us is obsessed by it, but part of us is like, God, just get out of here. I don't want to see the homeless. I don't want to see this.
Yeah. And which is very, very honest. I mean, that's a very honest depiction. I mean, I wrote when I wrote the musical Nia, I talked a little bit about what was happening in the Tenderloin and needles and all that sort of stuff. And I think about what I would call the Disneyification of storytelling. I mean, we see it in television, of course, we see it in the movies, and I get a feeling we see it a little bit in theaters as well, where you want to tell a proper story. I remember.
And then they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I presented to Corinne Foreman in Paris. She was like, "Wow, you got a lot of profanity in here. I don't know if we can cut some of that out." And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I agree with you, Robert. I mean, I think we need to address reality. Sometimes we need to see the stain on our proverbial cloth to show, just who we are, how human we are. And you're absolutely right. I mean, yes, we want to help. If I can't give a dollar bill to every homeless person that I go across, and sometimes I may need to, push somebody off or, tell somebody, hey, listen, I know you're high on coke or something like that, but, can you do it somewhere else or don't threaten me or whatever. Right. I mean, I when I watch I think one of the most vulnerable people are women who have children or someone who has a child, because they need everyone, the environment around them, to be protective of the child. I always see a look on the face of the parent who's holding a child, and they're always, their eyes are, they're in defensive mode. It's like,
Right.
don't get too close to my child, or something like that. So those are the stories that we need to hear. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah.
Well, what I find interesting with the diversity side of it is you're telling this complex story, and now you add in this element of race, which is a big part of our culture. But if the script isn't talking about that, what it forces the audience to do is to make sense of it for themselves. And I love that. It means I don't have to make sense of this. As an actor, I have to make sense of my character. What you think of a Black man in my situation as an audience member is way different than what I think about a Black man being in the situation I'm in. So when you put me in this situation that isn't designated as a racial story, a racial theme, a racial whatever, but I'm that next door neighbor, it colors it, it changes it into something else. And I think that's, I think that's the reality. I think that reflects the world that we're in. I think it's juicy what it does to an audience. Each audience member is going to have their own response to it. I think that allows you to take the play to another level. I love that.
Yeah, and I think even, to piggyback on what Norman's saying, when you have a Black, or let's say a minority actor, and it's not necessarily a minority role, like, this is a Black character, so we need a Black actor, but just a Black actor in any role. Not only do that actor brings in their perspective, which of course colors it, but you really do get, a sense. It even forces the director to rethink, or the director sort of just takes the wheels off and says, hey, you're going to drive this character to whatever. Like, I think about when you did Death of a Salesman, Norman, and that character took on a different perspective because that character is Black who has a white neighbor, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
It makes a big, especially if you're talking about a time in America, in American history. Even if the show doesn't directly reference that, it's the audience is going to get it subconsciously. At the very least, they're going to get some sense of dynamic subconsciously. Yeah.
And the audience has to say, wow, I never thought that a Black, or let's say an Asian person or a Latino person would think that way, or it really forces the audience to go in a different direction, which is perfect.
It's so funny. We came back to Arthur Miller.
right. Yeah, exactly. I did have a question for the two of you. So Denzel Washington, he's doing the movie Macbeth. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about that. I just read one review and it didn't sound too good, although I don't know.
Most reviews I've heard about have really raved about it. So I mean, I don't, to me, that's one of the ones where I feel like you guys might have different takes, but to me, it just seems like, why wouldn't Denzel do it? Or so? I mean, it's a great classic part. I mean, and you get, I mean, somebody, there weren't Black people in Scotland, or whatever dumb, stupid thing you want to say, but I don't know. To me, it just seems like he's a fantastic actor. He's a commanding figure. He seems like a warrior. I mean, the only thing about Macbeth is he's technically probably too old for the part, but who cares,
Right.
I mean, the thing that gets me about Macbeth is they always have these people in their 50s or 60s playing him, and like, I'm sorry, but the dude is like, he's a warrior. He can rip a person from seam to seam. He's like an athlete who's like 35 years old. But that's just
you're pushing it at that point. Yeah. It's a different story if it's the ambitious young guy versus the middle-aged, guy wanting that last bit of glory. Those are valid stories, but it makes it a much different story.
It makes it different.
I don't know. Mara wants to see it, so we're going to see it. I'm very particular about what Shakespeare I see.
Yeah.
No, I hear you, Norman. It's funny that you guys, the depiction of Macbeth as this young warrior type. I still remember the adaptation. I don't know if Robert, if you had remembered it, Macbird, where there was a young, I think, female playwright in the 60s who took, and it was on the heels of the assassination of Kennedy, who took Macbeth and transformed him into Lyndon B. Johnson. And basically, parlayed that, Macduff or Kennedunk Duncan was killed so that Macbeth can rise to power, or Macbird can
Right.
Yeah.
rise to power. So that was an interesting take on it. And of course, Macbird is a 60-year-old man.
Right.
Yeah. That's fine if you're doing adaptation. I mean, I don't mind. It's just sometimes I look and people, oh well, Othello, we're going to play Othello as a young man, and I'm like, I mean, okay, I don't know,
Right.
but it's like, to me, Othello, the whole point, like, I just bugs me when people say we're going to do Othello as a young man because that raises the stakes with the relationship with Desdemona, and I'm like, to me that lowers the stakes, but
Right.
whatever.
No,
I mean,
agreed.
Yeah, yeah, that would make a lot of
like, because
sense.
if it's just a young man, it's like two hot young people get together, big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
but it was an older man who's like unexpectedly like, wow, this older guy, this young white woman is interested in him. Those are pretty big stakes, and you're transgressing against the norm. That's pretty big stakes. I don't know.
No,
Anyway, but
I totally agree. There's a recent production of Porgy and Bess where they did it where Porgy wasn't crippled, and I'm like, I'm sorry, that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
yeah,
I still remember I was stage managing the Guerrilla Shakespeare Company, and we had Othello. As a matter of fact, we had Lauren Grace on, who was Desdemona, beautiful Desdemona, and the relationship worked. The problem was we had an older Iago, which makes sense, and
Yeah.
then that actor was fired, and then they brought in a young, he must have been just out of school, a young Iago who's like 25 years old.
Mhm.
And guess who was Amelia? Guess who was his, I think, is it Amelia?
yeah, his
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah,
His
the
wife,
Yeah.
played by Linda Ayres Frederick,
Oh,
which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah, I
It
don't
was a
know. I
crazy
mean, I
thing.
just, yeah, the old ancient Iago is played by a young man, and then Cassio's a young man. So
right.
yeah,
Right. It undercuts the text.
Yeah. I mean, the young man did the best he possibly could, but it was a rather strange production. Things like that happen.
Yeah, but
It's 12:07. I want to be respectful of people's time. Any last buttons or whatever? I mean,
well, just to come back to where are we going and what's going to happen next with theater. One, we don't have a clue. Doing Great Expectations to an audience completely masked was weird. We would have otherwise gotten all kinds of laughs that we just didn't. You'd hear the sort of titter, but it never
yeah,
really built. In fact, we got, a good third of the way into the show before we got a full audience laugh. And that's because it was just such a big, surprising moment that they couldn't help but burst. And so as we go back into the theater, that's what we're going to see. And that's what we have to see. Just to be safe, we're going to see these masked audiences. It's going to be this weird environment. My hope is we're going to see more things. Like, I'm not a Zoom fan for theater, but I will admit the other thing you asked about Jim Kleinman and Playground, the other thing that Playground is doing is they're streaming. They made a deal with SAG and they're streaming their shows. And that is the nature of what we're doing. I don't know how happy I am about it, but it is a way forward. My other hope is that, and it won't happen in the winter, but as we get to warmer times, that people will take their shows back outside and that we'll get maybe another good season of shows in interesting spaces that are open and ventilated, and you can kind of relax and appreciate that thing that we all want to see, which is live performance.
Yeah, there you go. So, Robert, I mean, when it comes to Anton's Well, let's hope, I'm cross our fingers, that at the very least the fall, things will start to open up. Do you have any upcoming things, or do you just really want to wait until you hear good news about Omicron and the COVID variant?
I'm trying, like I said, I'm finding very interested in poetry, and I'm thinking of like creating our own shows for a little bit, perhaps, or creating anthologies of poetry, because it'd be really flexible on setting, on staging. It could be indoors, outdoors. My only 2 cents about the future Bay Area is somehow I just wish there was like room for people to make their own decisions about what they want to do. I don't know. I feel like sometimes everything's getting to be like, oh, we have to do it this way, or this has to be done. And also I kind of feel like like there's room. I hope there's room in Bay Area for unnecessary plays. I feel like everyone's doing necessary plays, or we're all trying to say how everything is. And what if you want to do an unnecessary play? I mean, when I look at the plays we've done, I can't say that they're particularly necessary. I think they're beautiful and wonderful, but I kind of am against this idea of like the necessary play, to be honest. I don't know what that means exactly, but so I just hope there's room in Bay Area theater for a lot of different voices, and that we don't have to conform to what somehow seems to be we need to conform to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can have you're right, because there are different diverse audiences who some want to hear a message play, some wants to just laugh. I think about I don't know what Piano Fight is doing these days, but Piano Fight is a place where pre-COVID-19, let's say you get off of work and you walk in and there's a play next to a bar, and
Yeah.
people just sort of have fun, and that was a winning formula. And so yeah, I guess we'll just see. I imagine people will just for the moment just write, and they will plan and maybe fundraise and other things just to keep their names there. Anton's Well, the website is still there. I don't know if you guys have updated it since.
Not very much, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it'll be fun because it's kind of interesting just mentioning Piano Fight that they're coming to Oakland. And so it's good. That space, I think Piano Fight might be more amenable to booking their space, or maybe making deals with theater companies for short runs and different things there. Mm-hmm. So I think when I tried to talk to the people before, I never really got very far, because it just seemed like I feel like Piano Fight could be like, hey, we just want to do a show on like a Tuesday night or something, and they'll be like, okay, maybe that'll work out. I've never done anything with Piano Fight, but I've talked to people there, and it always felt like, hey, we can work something out. So I'm kind of intrigued by like just doing short things, maybe one-offs or a couple of night things at Piano Fight.
And they're at the old flight deck, right?
They're at the old flight deck, and I think it'll be an interesting
and they still have the space in the city, right?
Yeah, they still have the space in the city. And I hope I'm looking forward to like dropping by the Piano Fight in Oakland occasionally, and just seeing the Piano Fight is like a more improv, more younger theater audience thing. So for an old dude, it's kind of fun to go there and be kind of out of place. Norman and I had a great night there one time. Remember Norman? We had a night where Norman was in the show, but unfortunately his show got canceled. But they handed out free drink tokens to us.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, and that'll be in flight decks. That's only a couple of that's maybe that's walking distance for me. So that's and it's a nice area, downtown Oakland.
15th and Broadway. No, it's
really
great.
Cool.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I'm hoping good things for them. Well, I'm hoping that I'm rooting for Anton's Well, because you really take good time, you take good effort in putting on good productions, and I know the actors get a lot out of it. In talking with Crystal Brown, I've had her on at least 2 or 3 times on the podcast, on this podcast, and also on Black on the Bay.
Oh, nice.
And such an engaging character, and she really enjoyed what she was doing when she did The Human Ear and Anton's Well, because you guys really do a good job in uplifting the actor. And of course, Kim Donovan sings your praises. So, I'm really for Anton's Well.
We don't. I always laugh because sometimes people say, well, you don't have any production values in your shows. And number one, like, we've done shows in churches. We did Carol Churchill where it was supposed to be in a garden. We were in a garden. We were supposed to be in a funeral hall. We were in a funeral hall. We had $1 million production, dude. But but it's true. Like, we did Sam Shepard, and we did it in Old Finish Hall. It was a breaking down hall, and the show is about Oedipus, and it's about destruction. And during one show, the roof was blowing off. And the roof blew off at perfectly timed into the text. Oedipus would say there's a threat in the air, and part of the roof blew off.
Right.
There you go.
That's a great production design.
Wow.
The funny part was audience members came to me after the show and said, God, it was so perfectly timed how you had those effects. And I'm like, yeah, we really did a good job on that. Anyway, you know,
Somebody must have
Anton
gave
Well
God a
is all
cue.
about
Said, God,
Anton's Well-
Q5, blow the thing off.
yeah, Anton's Well is all about the actor because it's language and actor. Our company's
The
basically
text, yeah.
language and actor. So, you know, we hope to continue that.
Very
And
true. And
thank you guys.
yeah, we've always sang your praises. So I mean, like I said, I'm hoping for the
Yeah.
best for Anton's Well.
Well,
Shout
really,
outs.
thank you. I want to just shout out you two guys because, you know, inviting me on, I had a lot of incoherent thoughts lately, and just thinking about the last 24 hours since being invited, you know, you've really helped me focus on things. So thank you very much for.
Yay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is what it's about.
There's a big yay. That the yay is that you focused me in all these various thoughts, and I actually do feel yay about the future because, you know, there's people like you out there, and we'll make things happen.
Absolutely. That's what the A is all about. And we want to thank you. And, you know, you sponsor us. I mean, you know, you bought the shirt and
Oh, I love my shirt, man.
the
I
jersey,
like
I should
the
say the jersey. Yeah, exactly. So, you know,
Yeah.
this is what theater's all about. You know, we got to help each other out. And I would hate to see yet another company fold or move somewhere else because
Yeah.
of other little things. So, you know, Anton's Well should definitely keep going on. Shout outs, birthdays.
Birthdays. Today is Danielle Levin's birthday. Wonderful actress who I met a long time ago doing Cymbeline, you know, one of the strange Shakespeare plays that almost never gets seen. She played Imogen, the lead. I played the villain. I think I'm much happier now playing villains than I was then. That show was a stretch for me. Barry Graves' birthday is coming up this week.
Yay.
And he was our Richard Wright when we did Four Men in Paris. Taylor Valentine is somebody that I worked with when I was just starting out in Bay Area theater, and I believe he's directing in New York now, so that's kind of neat. I will leave this one for you. I will leave that one for you. Catherine Castellanos' birthday is coming up this week. Wonderful Bay Area actress who ends up everywhere. I mean, good God, New York, Ashland, just seems like she's always working. Yay, and deservedly.
She's
Joel
gonna play
Mead-
Fefu.
What's that?
She was just announced as Fefu for Fefu and her friends at ACT coming up in a little bit.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Joy Mead was somebody I met when she was, I believe, at Cal Shakes, and then
Yep,
she went
drama
away, and now she's back and she's working at ACT. And the last one I have is Holly Maddox, Bay Area actress, who I feel like I bump into these days, but you know, just sort of as audience, not we haven't worked together in forever. Anyway, short list of birthdays this week.
All
And
right,
I
and I've
left
got
a
my
couple of
list.
notes.
You took Barry Graves from me. I can't believe he's 43 years old. He just, I don't know, he just seems younger. He has a young spirit.
Old man Barry.
Yesterday was Angel Adeduncan's birthday. She is I'm sure you remember her, Norma. We had her on, and she proclaimed herself the sunflower, the little sunflower. She actually, she was Cinderella, a Black Cinderella for, I forget, I think
African American Shakespeare Company.
Yeah, the African American Shakespeare Company. So, and that was fantastic. I felt so good for her.
Mm.
On the 16th, tomorrow, a good friend of mine who graduated with me from Duke Ellington School of the Arts, Priscilla Precious Porter. And speaking about Macbeth, she did I remember she did a monologue, "Out damn spot, out I say,"
Yeah.
Lady Macbeth. And I still remember her. We were just high school kids doing that. Any case, her birthday is on the 16th, and I believe she's teaching at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. So that's awesome.
Sweet.
Also, another graduate from Duke Ellington. She graduated, I think, 2 years above us, Monica Baker Penna. I have no idea if she's still acting, but she was fantastic. Her birthday is the 17th. Also on the 17th, I think you saved this for me, Lamont Rigel.
Yeah. That was one
fantastic Bay Area actor. I remember him. I'd worked with him first doing, it was off Broadway West's Master Harold and the Boys. And he was the lead actor in that and did a magnificent job. He's also worked with, is it Central Works? I'm sure he's worked with Central Works, but he's also worked with Bendlestiff. I think Alan Kismorio directed him at one point. And also, Town Hall Theater. In any case, Lamont's been around, and his birthday is on the 17th. Also on the 17th, I love telling the story, Noel Katz. So when I graduated from Duke Ellington, I automatically worked for this theater company called Third Step Theater Company, and we were doing just a bunch of new musicals by young musical writers, and one guy was Noel Katz, and this was back in 1992.
Damn.
Flash forward to 2017. I'm doing Nia. I'm at the
musical cafe.
Yeah, musical cafe, but we did it at the piano fight. It was a piano fight. Okay. And one of the audience members taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, I don't know if you don't know me, but I'm a friend of Noel Katz. And he says, congratulations. And I'm like, my God, I have not seen him in 30 years. How in the world did he even know? And this is in New York. How did he even know about this? So I have no idea how it happened, but the universe works that way.
That's wild.
So yeah, his birthday is on the 17th. Magnificent musical writer. On the 18th, Denmo Ibrahim. We've had her on. A magnificent playwright of a Middle Eastern descent.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember her being on, but she.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I've been waiting to. Denmo's been a name that's been circling in my universe, I think, since she got here. So I was happy to finally be able to.
Yeah, there are certain people who, it's almost like a steak in the griddle. You put the steak on the thing and they just sizzle. And she's one of those. Immediately when she came in, everyone's been talking about her. And I work with her doing the Brecht Project. She wrote a wonderful piece, an adaptation of The Jewish Wife. So Denmo, her birthday's on the 18th. And the last one, I'm sorry, I actually have two. Do I have two? No, I have three. I have a couple more. Usually you have more than me.
I know. Case, I'm surprised.
Yeah. On the 18th as well, Jennifer Medeiros. She and I acted in Candide, the little mini operetta. She had a magnificent voice. She was actually battling cancer at the time. She's a cancer survivor. And so she's magnificent, and her birthday is on the 18th. On the 19th, Jackie Castillo. She's a Philippine actress. She acted in my play Ang Espia, an adaptation of Bertolt Brecht's The Spy. And we did that. That was one of the first Zoom things that we did for Bindlestiff Studios. And that was great to work with her again. Another Ellingtonite that graduated a year after me, Sherelle Elan. She's in LA, and she's doing magnificent things, a model and an actress. Her birthday's on the 20th. And the last one that I have is Dup Cresson. He is a magnificent musician. He's a drummer and also a musical writer. I think he's been working with Plethos, and I worked with him. We did Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown at the Town Hall Theater. And he is a magnificent musician, and his birthday's on the 21st. Those are my lists of birthdays. Shows. Kimberly
Ridgway is directing the
keep moving forward.
Dragon
Playground.
Dragon Production Theater Company. And she is directing one for Playground. You're right. So that's coming up, and Playground is not this Monday. It's normally the third Monday of the month. I don't know why, but they flipped it this time, so it'll be
on the 24th.
Monday, and the third Monday will be New York Playground. But anyway, Kimberly is directing a really cool piece. I can't wait to see what she does with it. What else did I have? I had.
I've got two.
Go for it.
You have two? Yeah. So what you're talking about, keep moving forward. That's the theme for Monday Night Playground. That'll be on the 24th. And Yumi Kabori also has a piece written in it. The play that Kimberly Ridgway will be directing is written by Christian Wilburn, who was also that's episode 198. We interviewed him on the A. Also, I believe The Hollow is still going on. The Hollow, City Lights Theater. And Yumi Kabori, she's been on a roll. She wrote a piece. She's in the show. That'll be January the 20th to February the 20th, if it has not been canceled.
Right.
And also Broadway on Demand. This is something that's being streamed. Alan Coyne, is in that.
Oh,
That's a
right.
play called Constellations.
Yep.
And that'll be streaming the 16th, that's tomorrow, and also the 23rd. And there's a link where you can buy a virtual ticket to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of podcasts that I want to pump out. Barry Graves, we just talked about his birthday. He has a podcast, The Black Man's Heart, so you can check that out. Also, our wonderful consulting producer, Mallory Samara, has a podcast, CBS, called Connect the Dots. And they have she just posted I don't know if she posted it on Facebook, but basically they're doing an exclusive on COVID-19 and how it's affecting school children. So check that out. Connect the Dots. That's KCBS Radio. Also, Bendelston Studio has the Fobcast, and that's going on. And I don't know if in the very beginning of our show did I pump. I wanted to give a shout out to Central Works, basically sponsoring us. A new play theater headed up by Gary Graves and Jans Leifler. Central Works, reinventing theater one play at a time. I don't know if I did that in the very beginning. But in any case, I'll do it again. Go ahead, Norman. Did you have anything else?
I don't know. I had 12th Night, but yeah, I mean, I've just read about 12th Night canceling. We could almost do the whole list of shows that have canceled, like Othello.
Yeah, poor Letitia Duarte. She was going to be Desdemona in that.
Yeah. So, no, I don't. I'll pump that the James Baldwin Centennial preview will be happening, but that's February 19th.
Yep, and we'll have time to pump that. And also, we've been pumping the jerseys, and Robert bought one, so we want to thank you for that. And I still have jerseys around. We have white, we have pinstripe, we have black. Since $30. So just send me a private message via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just let me know, and I will hook you up. That's it. Robert, did you enjoy yourself?
Any shout outs you got?
My mom's going to turn 90 years old in January, so she's pretty
incredible. That's awesome.
And I love my jersey. I might get a different colored jersey, have a little variety, little change of color in my jersey. But again, thank you guys. It really is helpful to talk to people, and it's been fun.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And that was at the last minute, because I was about to say, I don't know, man. I know no one's showing up, and I'm not a Zoom person myself. I had thought that we were going to continue to do things live, but obviously people are very concerned about COVID-19 and being infected, and also just the commute.
Yeah.
If you're going to be around people who are susceptible, in those groups, all the different, ways that somebody might be more in danger than we are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's not a problem at all doing it. And also it brings us back to doing things on YouTube, because we've been sort of not neglecting that. So in any case, we are on YouTube. You're probably watching us now. Please like and subscribe. Click on that the bell for new updates. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like, and we will proceed in kind. If you're listening to us on the traditional audio app, then we're on all audio apps that you listen to your podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on the purple Apple Podcast app. And if you're an Android user, you go on to the SoundCloud app, or just go on soundcloud.com, and you will find us. The Yay was created by theater people for theater people. If you have a show you want to advertise, or if you just want to advertise yourself, let us know. Hit us up. We're on the Yay 3. That's our official Twitter feed. We're also on Instagram. We're on Facebook. I'm at Red Space Clay.
And I'm at Who's Your Hoosier.
And Robert, are you on social media? Well, people should check out I think it's org.
We're on Facebook. We have a little Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Facebook page as well.
We're on Instagram too. We have an Instagram page too.
Yeah, nice. antonswell.org. And we'll have a link to that as well. And that is it. Thank you so much. I'm going to get some lunch and also check out the wild card. I'm an NFL fan. So, Hey, the Niners are playing the Cowboys in the playoffs again. It's like the 90s.
It's an old time.
I remember back when I had my Philly and, rooting for Steve Young and all those guys. So in any case, go Niners. Thank you so much. Happy, wonderful MLK Day. Go out and, do some public service.
And my anniversary is tomorrow.
And your anniversary, Monday. 5-year anniversary for you and Mara?
6.
Right on. Let me not undercut you
Yay.
guys. Hopefully you two will have a wonderful anniversary. Thank you so much. And as Norman and I always say,
We gotta
find
a
better sign-off.